Welcome to our first webinar for the year 2022. We are the India chapter of Women's Declaration International, leading global organization defending women's sex-based rights against the threats posed by gender identity ideology. There's more information on the website, womensdeclaration.com, where you will find our declaration on women's sex-based rights, which has been signed by more than 29,000 people from 157 countries and is supported by 418 organizations. In today's webinar, we have three very special speakers. We have MA. Her interest is in exploring the application of radical feminism in India. She's going to talk about gender identity and the relationship with misogynistic exploitative practices against women. Next, we have JR. Majoring in sociology, JR is interested in sociology of health and the impact of gender identity ideology in Indian academia. Her presentation is on the institutional capture. Finally, we have MB, a student and feminist activist who is interested in the impact of liberal misogyny on women's rights. MB is going to talk about Indian lesbians who are stuck between the conservative lesbophobia and misogyny of LGBT cult.
I will be speaking on gender identity and the relationship with misogynistic exploitative practices against women in India. The rise of gender identity in India is eroding women's rights. But in addition to it, there is a rather sinister relationship between gender identity and some misogynistic practices against women. In my part, I would elaborate on how this is happening in India. So first up, I'm going to talk about the fashion and beauty industries, which are built on the imposition of pain and inconvenience on women by way of clothing, depilation, and makeup. But to genderists, these practices are an important means of performing or expressing gender and gender identity. Alok Ved Menon, a performance artist, says, I was tired of seeing cisgender models being congratulated for transgressing gender on the runway, while gender non-conforming people continue to be punished for doing it on the street. So I decided to try my hand at designing my own clothes. I wanted to show the world that gender non-conformity, that trans femininity, that body hair is beautiful, that trans people can and should be at the forefront of this movement in fashion. Trans activists argue that trans-identified people need more representation in the fashion and advertising industries. And it is the failure to do the same which makes fashion and beauty industries exclusive and non-diverse. There are jewelry and fashion brands in India who, in the drive to be inclusive, are now advertising products which traditionally feminine products with trans-identified men as the center. Like, for example, this is an ad done by a jewelry brand called Bhima, featuring a trans-identified man and his journey of transition leading up to the final day of his wedding, on which he is decked in jewelry and a typical Indian bridal costume. Women and girls in India know well that carrying all that metal onto oneself is tiring, and there is always the pressure of losing so much as a trinket. Bangles make it difficult for women to use their hands freely, and earrings can be worn only after going through a painful process of puncturing, which little girls are put through. But with gender identity, these markers of women's oppression are now being celebrated as part of a man's journey into becoming a woman. Similarly, in a bid to express their femininity and their gender, trans and non-binary identifying men also take to pornification, as shown in this picture. But what the gender cult celebration of fashion and porn culture completely ignores is the misogyny inherent in these industries. This is because fashion and beauty relied on the continued degradation of women and the female body. Uncomfortable garments like sari, gowns, dresses, heels, makeup including accessories like jewelry and bindi all involve women putting themselves through inconvenience and literal pain. The use of makeup products inflicts damage on women's skin. These practices are imposed on women under male supremacy to make the subordinate status of women clear. Women and girls in India and all over the world have to engage in one or more of these practices, like maintaining long hair, for example. Beauty and fashion exist to make women desirable and fuckable to men. Male supremacy dictates the masochism inherent in beauty practices so that women can so much as have a place in the society. Similarly, pornography objectifies women and serves the male sex right of sexual access to women. The making and consumption of pornography is already rampant in India, with the mainstream discourse defending it as free speech, whilst ignoring the harm done to women and girls. Now, added to that is gender identity and trans identifying men bolstering porn culture by claiming that the same is a means of self expression and individual identity, thus making the systemic operation of beauty and porn on women and girls invisible and obscure. Men adopting these practices like fashion and beauty is not equalizing or revolutionary. It is an insulting parody of the tyranny imposed on women on a daily basis. A drag queen in India who goes by the stage name Rovina Tampon, with his real name being Rovin Sharma, says in an Indian magazine, "We are fighting in our heels and gowns with our makeup on. Just accept it." Sadly, Indian women cannot say the same because of the pain caused to our feet by the heels and the gowns hindering our movement. Hundreds and thousands of women all across India, both rural and urban regions, toil in schools and offices as housekeepers and laborers in something as exhausting and uncomfortable as a sari. These women do not have the luxury to go to work wearing something comfortable, as they are likely to be killed should they transgress the norm. And girls as young as 17 have been killed by their families for wearing jeans in India. But with its excessive focus on performance and superficial depictions using mass media, the gender cult has completely ignored the fact that beauty and porn are not about liberation or fun in the first place, but the sadomasochism of men as the oppressors of women. What would truly be liberating is a systemic opposition to fashion, pornography, and beauty practices in India, which is not incoming from gender identity and genderists. Furthermore, there is the issue of surrogacy. Surrogacy refers to a practice wherein a couple rent the womb of a woman who would gestate and carry a child, which he then has to hand over to the couple upon birth. Surrogacy is done for monetary compensation or for altruistic reasons, not involving payment. The Surrogacy Bill of 2019 does not recognize trans identified people as eligible to rent a womb. Trans activists argue that trans identified people should have access to surrogacy so that they can have a child and make a family. And the surrogacy bill, not allowing the same, makes it exclusionary. However, there is no right to have a child, either under the Indian constitution or the law otherwise. The trans rights lobby ignores that surrogacy is a violation of women's bodily and physical integrity. It is because it involves inducing a woman's body to go through the physiological process of gestation to satisfy the wishes of someone else, and the medical procedures administered cause long-term physical damage to women's bodies. In India, it is the most vulnerable and poorest of women, along the lines of caste and class, who find themselves forced to rent their homes. On the contrary to the popular suggestion that it allows women to earn a livelihood, surrogacy traps women into a vicious cycle of poverty, where they are back to the same condition of desperation once the money runs out. Yet the trans lobby defends surrogacy as a matter of rights of trans identified people. A trans identified male has preserved his sperm at a fertility clinic in Gujarat and says, "To become a mother, I will not be shy in seeking surrogacy options across the globe." No one, trans or non binary or homosexual, has the right to exploit women's bodily integrity. Then comes prostitution, which is often referred to as sex work in liberal circles. Many trans identified men are forced to prostitute themselves. In liberal discourse, prostitution or sex work is referred to as a primary means of livelihood for these men. But the support from the trans lobby for the abolition of prostitution in India is yet to be seen, in the sense that it is not forthcoming. Defending prostitution as work done by trans identified men has the effect that lakhs of women and girls who are also trapped in it, prostitution being an institution of male supremacy, cannot exist prostitution.
So I will be covering the institutional capture of Indian institutions by gender ideology. So the first thing I'm going to be talking about is queer cells in colleges and how these student communities have sort of led to advocating for administrative decisions like a gender neutral space. And what happened in TIS was that the ground floor of an existing girls' hostel was changed to accommodate gender non-conforming students. That is, they're going to also be admitting men in what was once known as a female only space. And another issue with this is that the syllabus is also facing some changes. And the TIS Masters in Women's Studies, although they make a distinction between women and gender in their syllabus outline, the last semester is offering electives that say gender and media culture, queering feminism, gender ideology, and education. And to be on the safer side, we should just assume the worst. And moving on to gender neutral housing, that is also coming up in UOH. So in this case, what happened was there was a trans identified male called Aruvi who was waiting in a women's hostel for his friend, I suppose, and he was asked to leave by the security or the warden, saying that this was a women's hostel. And he wrote about how he felt humiliated and how he's enraged and how he, or like, transgender or gender non-conforming students should also get their own space. And the issue with UOH is they often cast bait and exploit Vemula's memory to suit their narrative, which is something that we're definitely up against. The issue is that it's a sex segregation is not a caste issue. It's a women's safety issue. And for them to, like, manipulate then these narratives to just strawman our arguments is very wrong. And moving on to Ashoka's gender neutral spaces. So this is where a bathroom, the female and male bathroom signs were removed and a gender neutral sign was placed to be inclusive of everybody and anybody going inside. But I will also mention that Ashoka is a very elite institution. I think this does become a matter of concern when it trickles down to public spaces. And for all we know, it does start at an institutional level. And the next will be Ashoka's Instagram handle. So recently I learned about something called pronoun privilege that is going around. And it's apparently not just disrespectful to or like misgender someone or whatever, but also oppressive. So this is a way of guilting people into going along with what they believe in. And for anybody who's been in first year or second year of their college, you try to go on with whatever group think that's there so that you feel included. And I do feel this is like very manipulative and very, like, not allowing space for new thought as such, like, to challenge this. And this is another issue that I want to bring up, how there are funds being raised for people who want to go undergo gender reassignment surgery. I think these funds are being raised by conducting quizzes, and a recent was hosted by Nadika Najja, a trans identified male who calls himself a lesbian. I just wanted to point out that such a twisted person is engaging with impressionable minds in college, and this is very disturbing. They're glorifying transition. Here they're saying that life is easier and more comfortable when individuals undergo transition. I just want to bring to light that I don't know what about mutilating your genitals and taking a lot of hormones will make life any easier or more comfortable. The next is they are debunking some myths about gender dysphoria, where they are ignoring the link between body dysmorphia and gender dysphoria when there is a link between the two. The A lot of girls who grow up do experience body dysmorphia and are very prone to, like, eating disorders. And there has been proof that a lot of people who are identifying as trans now do have a lot of these eating disorders and other issues self-image and body-related issues. And moving on from that, I want to talk about how Jamia Queer Collective is promoting gender ideology through social media, and how there is this one session that was called Demystifying Queer Mental Health that was held. So my issue with this is that feminism has become such a consumerist philosophy online, like, with this he for she going on, and wanting to be inclusive of everyone and everything, when it really shouldn't be. Feminism is exclusively for women, and there shouldn't be any room for men who identify as queer or different or whatever. And this person, this girl, Diksha Bala, is like, part of the postmodern school of feminism, and is queer affirmative and whatnot. This is being introduced in academic spaces. This is a big issue. And moving on from that, I want to talk about the importance of girls' colleges. I am a beneficiary of like, a girls' college. I did my undergrad in a women's college, and I see like women from all walks of life coming there, like women from very conservative families, especially, like, they wouldn't have gotten to study unless, like, there was a girls' institute. Their parents were only okay with putting them in college because there was a girls' institute. And historically, women's colleges in India were set up to further women's education, to get them to leave the kitchen and leave their homes and get an education. And, it is a safe space that is being created. I do see girls who are more confident, more expressive of themselves than I would in a co-ed educational space. And, our body language shifts when we're, like, in a female only space. Like, we're not always slouching, we're not always, stuttering or hesitating to say what we want to say. And, it's very important that, girls have their own space. Women's college rejects admission of trans women. So this was a case in Kerala where the women's college questioned high court orders that said they had to reserve seats for trans women. They argued that it would change the nature of the college, and that the college is a minority institution that has its right to admit students that they want, fiercely maintaining that a women's college is a female only space. Delhi University DU is also not admitting trans women to its women's only colleges, and they specifically said that the lack of infrastructure in terms of unisex washroom will lead to this policy decision, acknowledging that like it could become a safety issue to admit trans identified males into women's colleges. This trans identified male, Manabi Bandopathy, has made headlines for being the first transgender college principal of a girls' college in West Bengal. And this is being hailed as something very progressive and great, when it really isn't. It's actually a mockery to women that, a man is sort of better suited to head a women's only college. Dil Se Open is Axis Bank's new initiative. Um, I assuming Mr. Harish Iyer had a lot to do with it. First, I will go ahead with giving a little background on Mr. Harish. He is an LGBTQ rights activist who's gobbled up gender ideology and is really pushing it in on all his media accounts. Like, even if you see his Twitter pronouns, it says he slash she. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. And he's recently joined Congress, and he's really known for his media advocacy and his engagement with a lot of Bollywood celebrities. So we're talking about someone who does believe in the trans agenda in politics, having a major media presence and policy level influence in a bank. So some of these inclusive initiatives include employees are allowed to dress in anything they want. And another one is that the restrooms have been open to all genders. That is, men and women will not have sex segregated spaces. And another one was MX can be had added as a title instead of Miss or Mr., considering that, they have to be inclusive of non-binary people. And this appears very contradictory to the other set of policies that they're introducing. That is, they're saying the Axis Bank is saying that they can make same-sex partners a nominee and can open joint accounts with same-sex partners, but they still somehow manage to include this gender expression nonsense. And moving on, I wanted to talk a little about Alok Menon. He's an Indian American trans rights activist. As MA covered, I think he's known for his like bad poetry and absurd fashion choices. And he's also very influential in Indian academia to a certain extent, I would say, where he posts his views on white feminism. And I would say this is race baiting. And I would like to add that there are oppressive structures in the global south that have very little to do with colonialism, like sati, for example, that is the burning of widows. So this form of race baiting sort of obscures conversations that need to be had about oppressive structures in the global south. And another one of his posts was where he was defaming Raymond, saying that turf ideas have somehow mainstreamed when turf ideas are clearly not mainstream, saying that she argued that trans women were men colonizing women's spaces, which is true, by the way, and somehow trying to insinuate that the turfs and the right wing are working towards bringing gender activists down, when it's really not the case. So the issue with Indian academia is they've sort of gobbled his nonsense up, and now they are spewing it in different ways by like creating a link between uh, trans activism and caste, and how that is often like used to straw man arguments that like gender critical people put forth every but any gender critical person is always called a savarna bigot or something along those lines if they disagree with the fact that like trans identified males shouldn't be admitted to women only spaces.
Hello, everybody. I will be talking about Indian lesbians and how they are stuck between conservative lesbophobia and misogyny of LGBT cult. So I will begin with the condition of lesbians in India, conservative lesbophobia. Conservatives believe that lesbianism is just a phase or a disease that needs to be cured. So if the community suspects that some girl or a woman is a lesbian, they take her to a tantric, astrologer, or a psychologist. They confine her at a home, or they put her on medications to cure lesbianism. The woman also goes through a faces mental and physical abuse. Often fathers, brothers, husbands, and sons rape them to correct them. Families pressure to marry a man and separate from lesbian partner. Many times families and communities kill these women to save their honor. And convergent therapy is very widespread in India. We will talk about it in later slides. And there are religious ceremonies that are performed to cure this sin called lesbianism. So when a woman comes out as a lesbian in her to her family, she already feels guilty of doing something criminal, and she expects understanding from her parents, but she doesn't get it. So if you come out as a lesbian, then many parents pressure the woman to marry a man and separate from their lesbian partner. So many lesbians do it for their parents' happiness. So men who marry lesbians, some men marry lesbians to save them from lesbianism. Some marry to fulfill their fantasies. Some marry lesbians because they haven't had a real man yet. And some gay men marry lesbians for legal reasons and pursue relationships with other men. Corrective rape, often by often fathers, brothers, husbands, and sons or cousins rape these women to correct them. These victims are traumatized and they prefer to delete the incidents from their memories and cut off ties with their families. So such incidents are rarely reported. According to a statistics by LGBT collective in Telangana, there have been 15 instances of corrective rapes that have been reported in the group in the last 5 years. A lot of times these women run away to some other place to live together away from their disapproving families. So in an incident in 2013, two young women fled to Bangalore from Kerala, but father of one of the women filed a kidnapping case against the other. So these women reached out to a support group. When choices become unbearable, suicide becomes the last resort. So according to a statistics, 22 young women in the Kerala state alone had committed suicide under such similar circumstances between 1995 and 2003. And this data was just from cases reported in the newspaper. In 2008, in Chennai, two women set themselves on fire after their families tried to separate them. Both of these women were married to men. One of them separated from her first husband, and then her relatives married her off to another man, and they moved somewhere else away from that place. So the family hoped that this would keep these women away from each other, but the women came together. They committed suicide together. Bullying in educational institutions. There are many instances where the staff members, teachers, and wardens, and even hostel girls trash and harass these girls. In many instances, in one of the instances, in 2018, a girls' school in Kolkata accused 10 students of being lesbians, and they made them write a confession letter. The headmistress said that her aim was to discuss the matter with the parents so that they can bring these girls on the right course through efforts both at home and in school. A UP school teacher thrashed and paraded two girls after accusing them of being in a lesbian relationship. So they just suspect that these girls are lesbians, and then they harass these girls. In one incident, hostel warden ordered other girls from the hostel to beat a girl they thought was a lesbian. They also poured chili powder into her mouth and refused to let her drink water. Very few openly lesbian women have made it to the mainstream. In the past few years, gay men society has started to accept gay men in politics, in judiciary, in many places, but lesbians are still invisible. Few are here. Advocates Menka Guruswamy and Arundhati Kadju. These two advocates represented the petitioners seeking to decriminalize homosexual activities that led to decriminalizing homosexuality in India. A wonderful power couple. Then another is Duti Chand, India star sprinter. She came out after Article 377 was scrapped. Another is Ritu Dalmia. She's a celebrity chef and a food entrepreneur. These kind of happy endings or supportive families are very rare. So recently, a lesbian couple got engaged in Nagpur. The couple met each other for the first time at a mental health conference in Kolkata. Both of their families were supportive, and they got engaged. This is a poster, initial poster of what was supposed to be India's first lesbian film. So in his tweet, Ram Gopal Verma tweeted that Dangerous is about two women who, because of bad experience with men, passionately fall in love with each other, and their intense affair throws them into the midst of dangerous criminals and even more dangerous cops, which leads to a dangerous climax. So, what this man is trying to suggest that female homosexuality is not independent of men, and that it's dangerous, it's man-hating, and that so it's basically like a porno movie made by a man for male audience. And if you compare it with Shubhamangala Zyada Saudan, which is a movie on a gay couple, so you can see the difference how gay men get their representation in the popular culture and how lesbian women get. So lesbian women are fetish or king for heterosexual men, while gay men are humans who deserve rights. Fetishization of lesbianism. So in India, Indian lesbian porn is on rise. These channels and videos are mostly owned and viewed by men. Okay. And men have fetishized lesbianism to the point that many women refrain from using the term lesbian to label their sexuality. Here are some of the screenshots of the titles of porn videos from Pornhub. So you can see the channel names and the titles. They are very misogynistic and lesbophobia and whatnot. So the idea that heterosexual men like it when two women make out and more is so commonplace that it's actually a cultural touchstone. They don't even have to be real lesbians. For instance, on Friends, which is a popular mainstream TV series, in that Chandler and Joey, who are heterosexual men, give up their apartment for the chance to watch two of their heterosexual female friends kiss for 1 minute. Corporate performative allyship. So the first Indian advertisement to feature a lesbian couple was created for the clothing brand. In that advertisement, a lesbian couple is preparing to meet their parents. So one of them is sitting on the couch, and one of them is getting ready, jewelry and makeup and stuff. So even though there is no man there, men are still there. In another advertisement for Dabur's bleach product, the advertisement shows a lesbian couple celebrating Karwa Chauth, which is a very regressive Hindu festival where Hindu wives keep a fast for their husband's long life. So this advertisement met with a huge backlash from conservatives. You can see that conservatives don't like lesbians, and these corporations, they don't like us either. Like, they are using us as pawns to increase their customer base, and they're putting lesbians into this heteronormative framework where we are doing celebrating the same regressive festivals. So what is needed? Safe spaces for lesbians, lesbian politics and movement, all of that free from men, widespread awareness, acceptance, laws and provisions, lesbian representation, and end of male gaze, entitlement, violence, etc. So are we there at? Let's see. Section 377, in a landmark 2018 verdict, the Supreme Court scrapped the controversial Section 377 of Indian Penal Code, thereby decriminalizing homosexuality in India, which is a good step. Then let's see. In politics, lesbians are excluded or sidelined in both electoral politics and in homosexual rights politics. So Congress MP Shashi Tharoor brought this bill to decriminalize homosexuality in Lok Sabha. In 2019, Harish Iyer became the first openly gay man to become a politician. He joined the Congress party. No lesbian has been given a party ticket yet. And in a half-hour video, one of the videos of Shashi Tharoor on LGBT representation and stuff, in the whole video, he does not mention lesbians even a single time. So the whole conversation is so male-centric. Even the topic of marriage is so male-centric. There is no lesbian representation. So double marginalization. So up until now, we have seen that gay men, even though they are marginalized because of their homosexuality, they are still men. So they do enjoy male privilege, which allow, so even if they get married, that allows them the freedom to seek other relationships. They are economically independent, and they get away with a lot by the sole virtue of being men. But lesbians, on the other hand, they are women, so there's oppression. And then there are lesbian women, so there's double oppression, right? So nothing challenges patriarchy more than lesbianism. You're saying you don't need a man and you don't want a man. So by coming out as a lesbian, you're threatening patriarchy. You're risking estrangement with your family, and you're also putting your personal safety at stake. So given that this double marginalization, this homosexual rights movement is supposed to be inclusive, supposed to advocate for their rights. So in 2018, a lesbian couple committed suicide in Gujarat. One of the women was married to a man and had a 3-year-old daughter. In their suicide note, they wrote, "We have left this world to live with each other. The world did not allow us to stay together. We did not have any men with us." So in an article covering this incident, this article quoted 2 activists talking on the plight of lesbians. One woman, one man who demands to be called as a woman, but none lesbians. India is a conservative society, a lesbophobic society. So meeting your match or dating in offline world or face to face is very difficult. Coming out to your colleagues or your classmates is very difficult. So online dating apps are supposed to be a safe space for lesbians to come out and meet another lesbians and date them, right? So there are a few lesbian dating apps, but they are not very safe for women. There is this As You Are, which is an Indian dating app co-founded by 2 Indian women. And they quote, "In many queer women dating apps, you will see many male profiles, not trans. And that clearly shows that no one is verifying profiles. Other apps assume that people are ready to come out, and they emphasize more on photos than content." So basically on this app, to sign up, you're required to give your name. Doesn't have to be your real name, and what you identify as, and who are you interested in. And they are given both this transgender and whatever. If you don't give pronouns, then you can't sign up. You lose that right to join this app and look for women to date. I talked with one of my male friends and asked him to create a profile on As You Are, and he did make one. So what he did that he identified as female, who is interested in females, but he's obviously a man, right? And the first match on As You Are was him, a man. So they're clearly not verifying profiles. And what is the point of verifying profiles? If you're letting a man to identify as a woman, then what's the point of verifying? There is no verification. What are you going to verify? Right. So it's just rubbish. There's this another Just She. It is an amazing platform for all the lesbian, bisexual, and trans women who are looking for their perfect match. So again, trans women. There's another Fame. Fame has taken online lesbian dating to another level. Unlike chats on Fame, you communicate through video calls. Then there's Joy. Joy is an amazing dating app that focuses on the aka lesbian part of the LGBTQ community worldwide. So I signed up on both of these apps, and within 10 minutes, I see men in my feed. So not really that amazing. Then there's Her. It is one of the world's biggest dating apps for LGBTQ plus women and queer folks, created for queer people by queer people. Her is a safe and inclusive space where you can connect with queer women, right? And there you go again, men, one with he, him, another with she, her. So the problem is that these same LGBT cult people claim that female is a sex and woman is a gender, and homosexuality is same-sex attraction. That means lesbians are females who are attracted to other females. So that basically means that gender is out of the equation. So sexuality has got nothing to do with gender. So why are these dating apps putting these options of gender and pronouns that have nothing to do with sexuality on these apps, right? And so you're telling that woman is a gender, right? So males can be women, right? But now these males are also claiming to be females. So basically, these people know that women are adult human females. They know that women and female are connected. They know the link, but somehow we are the transphobic ones are pointing it out. There is a true safe space for lesbian women to date, but it is constantly under attack by LGBT culture. The app is called Giggle. It is a female social media app which also has communities for grief and loss, freelancers, finding a roommate, exercising, hobbies in dating and activism, etc. It is a wonderful app. The name Giggle, which is the collective noun for a group of girls. So this app uses an AI facial bone structure recognition technology to determine if users are male or female. So this app verifies whether you're a man or a woman. And this technology, bone structure recognition technology, is one of the ways archaeologists are able to determine the sex of a skeleton. So Meta, previously Facebook, censored the ads of Giggle on Meta platforms. Male supremacist attacks, constant mass reporting and mass invasions. So on the right side, you can see in the picture that this man, just to make a point, got into Giggle, and then you can see that we are wearing this to town today. Let's see how many people I can trigger. On the t-shirt, you can see trans rights or else, and there are guns on the t-shirt. So basically that's a threat. Half of the app downloads have consistently been men trying to break into a space that is clearly not for them. So these men are proving why we need female exclusive spaces. One man even tried 48 times to get past the verification system. And the founder is constantly threatened with rape and death. The app and the founder are always portrayed in negative light by media. You can see here, this girls only app uses AI to screen a user's gender. What could go wrong? It doesn't work if you're trans. So you can clearly see the entitlement of these people, of this cult. They can't just simply celebrate that there is a female exclusive social media app. It has to be about them. Otherwise, it's hateful. Cordon sealing is what it means that a lesbian woman's no to a man who demands to be recognized as a woman is oppressive. The cotton sealing is used to challenge cis lesbians' tendency to draw the line at sleeping with trans women or including trans lesbians in their sexual communities. So let me translate it for you. That means that cotton sealing is used to pressure lesbians into sleeping with men, also known as rape. This term was coined by Canadian male porn star who demands to be recognized as a woman. And the cotton here refers to underwear, implying that the content of a man's underwear are of importance. So basically, you match with somebody on her, okay, and you meet up with that person, and then you're having sex. So that man completely passes as a woman. Okay, so that man has undergone every kind of cosmetic surgery, and he passes every visible trait of femaleness. Okay, let's say that. And then you're having sex, and then you see that he has a penis, and then you say no because you are lesbian and you are clearly not interested in dicks, right? So you say no. So that man will say that, oh, you're oppressing him. Yeah, so you are hateful for saying no. Liberal responses on the matter of lesbian women's bodily autonomy. So yeah, so when you talk about trans women raping or pressuring lesbians to have sex, right? So these liberals will respond with, no trans woman is pressuring lesbians into sex. No trans woman is raping lesbians. Okay, then you show them the evidence that there are incidents of this, and then they will say there are few rotten apples, but generalization is transphobic. Or they will say they're not truly trans. They're cis hetero men faking being trans to have sex with lesbians. And that isn't our problem to deal with. So they're telling lesbians, this LGBT cult is telling lesbians that rape of lesbians is not their problem to deal with. And if you don't want to suck female dick, then you're not lesbian. You are an anti-trans bigot. Trans women are women. They're always women. Lesbians should date them. And genital preferences are transphobic. So that basically means that homosexuality is transphobic. So what is homosexuality if not genital preference? So here you can see some screenshots of article. We are being pressured into sex by some trans women. That was article on BBC. And then on Medium, somebody wrote this article that says BBC anti-trans article explain. What they're saying is lesbians should not talk about trans women raping them, because then that puts trans women into negative light and that further marginalizes them. So what they're saying is that for the greater good, it is okay if lesbians get raped. So male pattern behavior of lesbians with penises, right? So on the left hand side, it's men and their typical regressive male behavior. On the right hand side, it's trans lesbians and their typical regressive male behavior. So male entitlement. Lesbians ain't interested in dicks. They are not interested in dating males, and yet these males are joining dating apps. Fetish. So trying to fulfill fantasies by sleeping with one or more of lesbian women, trying to get validation by sleeping with one or more of lesbian women. Mansplaining. Lesbians are women who haven't met the right man yet. It's just a phase. Lesbians like dicks too. Lesbians are attracted to feminine behavior. Males can be lesbians too. Lesbians like female dicks. Manipulation. Prove that you care about my mental health by sleeping with me. If you're not sleeping with me, then you want me to die. You hate me. Divide and rule. So men create this section of women, right? They are that these women are evil, and other women are not supposed to be like these evil women, right? So misandrists are evil, and transphobes are evil. Then lesbians are man-hating cunts, suck my dick. Lesbians are transphobic cunts, suck my dick. Assaults and rape. You can see that, you know, so if you, there are 9 men and 1 trans lesbian, and they died, and after 1,000 years, the archaeologists dig their skeletons up, they will find 10 males. And it is not hateful to say that. So convergent therapy is a pseudoscientific procedure where the people believe that they can convert gay or lesbians into heterosexual people. That involves painful and harmful medical procedures, surgeries and stuff. A Bihari female constable who joined the forces in 2008 underwent sex reassignment surgery because of the strict laws in India that do not legally recognize homosexual relationships. So basically, this is conversion therapy. But the media covered it as a big win for LGBTQ community. That you can see in the sub-headline that in a big win for the LGBTQ community, the CISF has officially recognized a woman who underwent sex change operation as a man. People don't like to see a woman and a woman together, or a man and a man together. So they would rather see one of the women going through painful and harmful, irreversible medical procedures, cosmetic procedures on the body to look like a man. So then the family can somehow accept that couple because one of them looks like a man and one of them looks like a woman. So this article glorified conversion therapy. It said that overcoming all social taboos, this woman underwent sex reassignment surgery, and that it is a big win for LGBT community. Another thing is that it also glorified internalized lesbophobia. So this statement is from the article that he said that though he was born as a woman, he treated herself as a boy. Okay. When you're growing up as a lesbian and you do not see lesbian representation in popular culture or your community, so what you see in the movies or in the everywhere, what you see is that a girl is interested in a boy is interested in a girl. Boy looks certain way, girl looks certain way. So lesbians pick it up, they internalize it that they are interested in girls, right? And girls are interested in a typical, they're interested in boys, and boys look certain way. So I'm interested in girls, so I must be a boy. But this LGBT cult, they rather glorify it as something progressive. Yeah, the pride marches are like filled with pornography and mockery of women. They are now happening in small towns in India too. So in pride marches, you can see that men dance on item songs. They imitate the dance style of the actresses from those item songs. They perform pornographic acts like twerking and humping and extra. So they put on BDSM costumes, or they put on women's clothing, lingerie and stuff, and they do these pornographic acts and item songs and stuff, and they derive pleasure from it. That man has wore this traditional clothing, Indian women's clothing. So we all know that femininity is a cage forced upon women, right? But for these men, it's exciting. It gives them pleasure. When lesbians are facing double marginalization, and these pride marches are where the community comes together, they have fun together, activities together, and they advocate for their rights. Lesbians are not they're not gonna feel comfortable or welcomed in these pride marches because it's mockery of us. They're literally mocking us women. So the LGBT movement can ignore the needs of lesbians, but lesbians must not hurt the sentiments of the team. So in India, same-sex marriage is still not legal. Though marriage is a regressive institution, but with marriage, you do get a lot of provisions and legal provisions. And in India, homosexuals, they do not have many legal provisions either. But a lot of resources have been spent on legal recognition of gender identity. So these trans rights are not up for debates, and they're literally everywhere. The LGBT organizations and their social media handles, the academia, everywhere, all they talk about is trans rights, trans rights, trans rights, and somewhere then gay men, gay rights, and lesbians are completely left out, right? So they can ignore lesbians completely, and they can keep talking about trans rights, trans rights, trans rights, like 24/7, and yet they claim that this T is the most marginalized, and somehow lesbians have cis privilege. You're not welcomed in the community if you don't comply to the gender identity politics. So if you do one of these things, you might get cancelled from this LGBT cult. So if you're using everyday normal language like women are adult human females instead of adult feminine human, then you're banished. Saying no to men who identify as women, you're banished. Referring to people by their sex pronouns like normal people do, you're banished. Following any successful or celebrity female who doesn't comply to the gender identity politics, and you're hateful. You're speaking your mind and asking the questions they don't have any answer to in good faith, then you're um, cancelled from the community. So far, what I have learned from this, what I have observed and experienced, is that LGBT movement is an extension of conservative lesbophobia. It's not an antidote to it. So, within these LGBT communities, saying no to men who feel like they are women is transphobic. Raping lesbians is fine as long as it validates the feelings of men who demand to be called as a woman. Rape culture is fine as long as it serves the great purpose of liberating trans people. If there are trans women who are raping lesbians, lesbians shouldn't talk about it since it puts trans women in negative light and that might marginalize them even more. Male entitlement, men wanting to have sex with lesbians is fine if they feel like they are women. Saying lesbians aren't attracted to males is transphobic, genital preference is transphobic, so homosexuality is transphobic. Conversion therapy is good if the lesbian woman feels like she is a man. Pointing out the misogyny of gay men or drag queens, men who demand to be called women, is transphobic, anti gay, and hateful. So they don't care if you are a lesbian or a bisexual woman or a woman with the DSD. They don't care. So as long as you're fine with the gender identity politics, you can do whatever you want. But if you're not fine with it, you don't comply to it, then you're completely banished.